You'll love what you hear. You'll love what you hear. So welcome to episode 10 of the Untold Tales Audio Anthologies. I am so excited because today I am here with the author and writer himself, Mr. Dr. Jeff Robinson, and we are going to be having some conversation about the exclusive, insider, provocative secrets that nobody knows about his writing process and his choices and stories. We're going to have a lot of really insightful questions, so I hope that you will stick with us through this episode. As always, we love our listeners, and we love that you're taking the time out today to listen to us and to explore more about Untold Tales and kind of dive deeper. We feel that that'll really give you a richer listening experience. So thanks again in advance for listening. So welcome, Dr. Robinson. It's so good to have you here today.
Thank you.
I have a list of questions here, and we're just going to dive into it. So what is your background? What is it that brought you to this point? It's a big question.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to have to summarize.
Okay.
My resume actually reads like a dictionary. But anyway, I'm retired right now, recently retired. But most of my life, I've been a technologist working in computers and automation. I worked as a physicist in a semiconductor manufacturing facility and a statistician, and I've been a consultant in process and quality. I taught graduate and undergraduate courses in business and technology for 30 years, only stopped last year. And along the way, I was everything from a short order cook and a published cartoonist to a jet fighter pilot and air traffic controller. I've been a teacher, a writer, a father, and now I'm a grandfather.
And you had a lemonade stand too, I bet, somewhere in there.
Let's see. I used to be more physically active. I ran marathons and scuba dived and fought competitively in martial arts.
Wow.
And I've had dozens of hobbies, from making stained glass and ceramic to more recently model building. I love to build those incredibly complex wooden models.
Wow, that's incredible. So that really informs your story. I would imagine everything that you write is informed by this broad, deep background of different skill sets, for sure.
I can draw from a lot of different experiences. I guess I just never decided what I wanted to be when I grew up.
But that's perfect.
Yeah, one of the most consistent things, though, is probably that for most of my 40 years, I read a book a day.
Wow. That's incredible. A book a day? Did I hear that? A whole book?
Yeah, on average. I've grown older and slower, and now I write. So I only average a couple a week now. But for most of my life, I read one book every day. I don't generally do a lot of television.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, we're going to table that because that's an incredibly interesting piece that I've never met anybody who read a book a day. So we're going to table that. But we wanted to kind of dig down and explore about you, like, who is Jeff Robinson? Where did you come from? Where did you actually grow up?
Actually, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. My father was a nuclear physicist and worked south of us at Argonne National Laboratories.
Oh, wow.
Actually, he's probably the person who influenced my writing the most. He was a brilliant man. He had PhDs in engineering, mathematics, and physics. And I grew up surrounded by science and immersed in it daily. I inherited my passion for science fiction from him. And actually, the first books I read were collections from his father.
Oh, wow.
First editions from Doc E.E. Smith's Lensman series, original copies of the old Amazing and Astounding magazines. My first science fiction books were the classics, Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, with smatterings of A. Merritt and H. Rider Haggard and H.P. Lovecraft for real horror.
Wow.
Anyway.
And how old were you? 4?
Actually, I was reading at 4.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I actually got scolded once in school for reading ahead. The teacher was working the class through one chapter a day. I took it home, read the whole book, and
Wow.
was told not to read ahead.
That's funny. They didn't know who they were dealing with, clearly.
No, my father intervened, and thereafter I was allowed to sit in the back while everyone else was struggling through chapter 2. I was allowed to sit in the back and read anything I want, and that's when I started my book a day.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. I mean, if our listeners, I mean, you've really got to appreciate this man and what he's telling you. I don't know very many people who have this caliber of just knowledge from birth, basically. That's amazing. So, speaking of birth, are you an only child then, or do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I've got 2 siblings, brothers, one a year older and one a year younger, and I was the typical middle child.
Oh, wow.
That they call them the invisible child,
Mhm.
and that was fine because I sat in the corner reading books or listening to my father tell stories.
Oh, wow. That's so funny. I'm actually of 3 sisters as well, and I think our middle sister could definitely identify with that sort of invisible, or the bad or invisible child in the middle. Um, my husband's the youngest, so that's good for him. But I'm the oldest, so I had a different experience growing up. So that's fascinating. So they just basically left you alone to do your thing, which was all right with you.
I didn't mind at all. My brother was a gymnast. He was physical. My younger brother was an actor, and I was the academic in the middle, the bookworm.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That's really insightful, because that really informs, where you come at your writing with. So, did you end up going, I mean, I would imagine you went to college because your father was an incredibly genius man.
Yeah,
um,
actually, I was the kind of person that college was made for. I was going to major in biology when I went to college, but I took a physics course, fell in love with physics, and never did take a biology course. But I
I've
doubled up.
never heard someone say they fell in love with physics. Maybe I just don't move in the right circle, or the same circles.
Oh, it's worse than you can imagine. I doubled up on all my courses.
Oh my
So
goodness.
as a sophomore, I was taking senior level courses.
No way, man. I went through engineering as well. I was an electrical engineer, and I did not have the same affinity for the subject matter. So I really appreciate that about you. That's
Well,
really awesome.
I was the type of person, like I said, college was made for. I ate, breathed, and slept my studies. By the end of my sophomore year, I'd taken every physics course they offered. So I'd finished my physics degree. I worked my junior year at Argonne National Labs as an undergraduate research assistant. Then I transferred to University of Illinois and picked up a second bachelor's degree in 3 semesters. So, and
Yeah,
then
I'm just going out to lunch and picking up something. I'm picking up a degree. Do you need anything?
no, I yeah, I was the bookworm.
That's awesome. Well, there you go. So this is right up your alley then, what you're doing today in your retirement. So that's amazing. It's amazing. So, so do you feel that the way you were raised really influenced your journey as a writer?
Oh my God, yes. My father was, as I said, a brilliant man, but he was very gentle and very quiet. But he was an incredible storyteller, and he had literally infected me with his love of science and science fiction. My mother was also a nurse, so between the two of them, there was virtually no question I could ask that didn't have an immediate answer. So I learned to love stories, from the books that my father shared to the stories he told me. And that's perhaps one of the most enduring gifts that I received, an insatiable curiosity about everything.
It sounds like, and this is a question I didn't ask you beforehand, but it sounds like your experience, your parents' care for you really provided a lot of safety for you to feel safe in writing and
Uh,
safe in exploring.
as a matter of fact, my wife works in early childhood education, and I didn't understand the importance of what my parents did until I became a father. But whenever I asked a question, my father would stop whatever he was doing, get down on one knee, which was essential. He stood 6'4",
Mm-hmm.
but he would get down, get eye contact, and answer my question right there, no matter what he was doing.
Wow.
And
That
my
shows
wife,
deep respect. He had a deep respect for you. I mean, if he did that, and that was, however, you know, 20
right?
years ago.
Yeah, he never said you're too young, you wouldn't understand. Ask
Mhm.
me later. He answered right then, because with kids, later might mean they'll never ask that question again.
Right.
So
Right.
it was his willingness. He understood the importance of questions and answers, and he never killed my curiosity.
What a gift, because you said that that's the key element, is the curiosity. And you felt safe being curious. And I think a lot of kids don't feel safe, being curious in their own homes. So what a great gift your father gave to the listeners today, is to allow your kids and the people around you to be curious and to feel safe in exploration, essentially. Very cool. Very cool. So here's we're going to shift a little bit the conversation from your background to the actual stories of Untold Tales. And so one of my great curiosities, and I got a few questions through email about this from our listeners, is uh, were any of the stories in Untold Tales true? Were they from true experiences, or did you make it all up from your mind?
Well, most of them are inspired by events, things I've seen or people I met, though some are just topics I've read about or discussed with others. None of them are strictly true, though there's one in the third volume that's mostly true.
Hmm.
And I'll let the readers try to figure out which one that is.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. Needle in a haystack. Try to figure it out. Next time you're listening, try to figure out which one is the one that's, almost kind of 100% true. Fantastic, fantastic. So I guess my next question to you is, did you begin publishing right when you started writing, or did you write for a period of time before you ended up publishing? How long did you actually write before you took the big step into actually publishing your work?
Actually, I didn't start writing until the 1990s.
Oh,
But I didn't publish any stories until about 2002, and those were short stories. Um, Back in college, you couldn't have, I didn't write. I read a lot, but I didn't write. You
mm,
couldn't have paid me $100 to put 3 sentences together into a paragraph. Um,
wow.
but about the mid 1990s, I took a creative writing course, and I actually had a lot of fun. But then after 2002, like I said, I published a few short stories and joined a writers group, and it just exploded. I wrote
Wow.
short stories and novels for more than a decade, but I didn't have much luck,
Hmm.
success finding a publisher. My wife edited everything for
She
me.
is a saint, because you
Oh,
have so much, so much content out there. Wow.
yeah. And the crazy thing is that she doesn't particularly like science fiction, but she likes what I write, she says.
Hmm.
But it wasn't until a few years ago that she said she wasn't going to read or edit anymore until I published some of them.
Good for you, wife. Good for you. What's
So,
your wife's name?
Barbara.
Barbara. That's right. That's right. Barbara. Good for you, Barbara. You give them hell.
So
Very
anyway,
good.
since then I've published a couple dozen short stories and 6 novels, and I have another half dozen in the pipeline for publication. So once I got started, it was like a dam burst.
Wow. Wow. I know people that have creative block that, especially now that we generate a lot of content for businesses and for your social media. There's a lot of people who have the opposite problem where they can't think of a new idea to save their life. So what a gift you've been given to sort
And
of channel all of
by
those
the way,
stories.
that's an old joke about somebody. He wanted to a writer who wanted to write a book on writer's block but couldn't figure out how to get started.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, very cool. So good for you, Barbara. Thank you for your contribution to the world and we wouldn't be hearing and reading Jeff's stories without you. So thank you. So let's talk about the next thing. We're in the middle of the questions here. So thank you, listeners, for sticking with us. We hope you're finding everything that we're talking about very interesting, and you can always email us or let us know if you have more questions. So what kind of stories, Jeff, what kind of stories do you really love to write?
Well, obviously, technical stories, but in terms of the actual story, a lot of writers are convinced that for any story to work, they have to have characters that change. They even create these complex character arcs on the journey, the internal journey that a character in the story will take, either awakening or maturing. And to a great degree, that's true. Characters that don't change tend to be flat, shallow, two-dimensional stereotypes. But the kind of stories that I like to write don't just change the characters, they change the reader.
That's an important distinction. That's an important distinction.
The kind of story I like to write is one where I describe a scene or an event or a situation, and then I tell them a story, and then lead the reader back to that earlier scene or event, only for them to find that it's seen and perceived in an entirely different way. It's changed, but it's not because the characters changed or grew, but more importantly, the reader was changed. That intervening story somehow caused them to see things differently they had before. And if I can captivate a reader sufficiently to change them that way, it means I was successful in touching them at some fundamental level and changing them and their perceptions through the story itself. So that's the kind of story I like to write or tell the best.
Wow, I love that. So it's a very a transformational story for the reader, more so than for the characters, which is a novel, for me, a novel spin on storytelling. So that's very insightful. Thank you for that. On the heels of that question, what is your greatest joy in writing? What gives you the most joy about your craft?
Wow, that's a hard
Another big question.
I guess the first thing is that when I write, I get into flow. That's a term in psychology. They call it a semi-meditative state of intense concentration. But when I write, time ceases to exist. I may read or write for what seems like only a few minutes, only to look up and find out that hours have passed.
Wow.
On one occasion, it was a weekend when I was traveling in Italy for business, and I decided rather than go touring, I'd stay in the hotel and write a little bit. And I decided I would just write until I was tired. So I sat down, and when I finally stopped, I was tired and realized I had spent 21 hours in one place.
That's love. That's love.
With 21 hours without moving, and my back hurt like crazy. And I'd written more than 15,000 words in one sitting.
Wow.
And that's when I decided, I think I like writing.
That's kind of like when you go on a first date and you sit with somebody and you talk to them until 3 a.m. and you're like somehow not tired at all, but usually you'd be like dead asleep at 3 a.m. So that's definitely love for sure.
Yeah, you're exhausted when the conversation's over. You realize how tired.
Yeah, totally.
So the second joy is that when I write, I think of things I would have never imagined or suspected. I think part of it is because I'm in this flow state, but often also when I'm in the rewriting phase, I'll add details and plot elements and twists and finishes that I would not have thought when I originally envisioned the story. So as a writer, when I'm in flow, I'm actually discovering much of the story that I write.
So the next question I have for you is probably a duh, since we've already learned so much about your background and about your father and your mother and where you grew up and how you grew up and your education. But why do you like science fiction? I mean, you could have chosen any other genre in the world. Why science fiction? Why?
Well, two reasons. First of all, I'm a true technophile. I love technology. I measure the quality of my life based on the toys I get to play with and the gadgets.
That's funny. I'm sure Amazon loves you.
Yeah, but because of the reading I did as a child and my father introduced me to, uh, I love good science fiction because it's so incredibly rare.
Hmm.
So much science fiction out there is frankly not that good. Too much science fiction focuses on the science, the technology, the ships, the weapons, the gadget. But I learned from my dad that the best science fiction really isn't about technology. Good science fiction isn't really about science at all. When writers focus on those things, they take good ideas, and the stories they tell are often shallow and superficial. The heart of a good science fiction story is basically just a good story, a
Hmm.
love story, a murder mystery, a whodunit, a theft and a rescue or a getaway, an adventure. Science is just the setting, the venue, or the excuse for the story. In good science fiction, science and technology should be the window dressing or a fancy enabler to frame the story or amplify the conflicts. The focus of a well told or well written tale should be on the characters, not the tech, the action and plot, not the weapons or the faster than light space drives. It should be the conflicts, the challenges, hopes, and dreams of people that are introduced, not time machines or futuristic gadgets. Uh, Also, for science fiction to maintain its credibility, science has to be respected. You shouldn't play fast and loose with physics or ignore fundamental limitations of technology. You shouldn't trivialize science or make it magic.
Hmm.
Then the genre shifts not from science fiction but to pure fantasy.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's probably the reason why stories like Star Wars and Star Trek and Doctor Who are so enduring. 20, 30, 40 years longevity, because they're essentially stories about anti-racism, togetherness, love. They're not really about science, technology, science fiction at all, right?
Right. The science in those stories, like I said, is just adds color and setting, but it's the people and the characters that make the story interesting.
Right, right.
In a good science fiction story, you forget about the science
Yeah.
and you're lost and immersed in the characters and what's happening. So much science fiction focuses on the science that they forget the characters.
Right, right. And that's probably why Barb, I mean, she says she doesn't like science fiction, but a good love story, a good human connection story. I'm sure that those are stories she does love. So there are a lot of big words in your stories, because as a narrator, sometimes I have to warm up like an athlete, to say some of the words that are in your stories. But because that's my background, it's very natural for me. But for sure, if somebody was narrating those stories, they definitely have to take their tongue through a workout to pronounce some of the scientific words in there. So that's all very interesting and wonderful. And thank you so much, listeners, for continuing to hang on with us, because I feel like this is just getting started. We're just getting to the juicy stuff. And the next question that I have is actually a super juicy one is, do you do do you actually do research in a genre before you start writing, or do you use all those years of college education and just go for it? What's your process with that? Do you do research before you write?
Oh my God, yes. Do I do research in one of my recent novels, The Matriarchs? I extensively researched genetics, natural mutations, evolution, and so on, and factored a lot of that into the book. In my last book, Darker Days, I had to research history and military weapons and space habitats and exotic sciences, primarily because I'm not explaining the math behind it, but I want what I talk about to be accurate. So I had a space habitat and I had to make calculations. How big would it have to be to house 500,000 people, and how much square foot per person, and how big would the rings have to be, and how fast would they have to rotate?
Wow.
Generate one G of gravity. And so that what I describe is accurate and realistic. But in this last book, I researched so much, I actually put an appendix in some of the explanations in the back, which aren't...
Wow, that's unusual, to say the least. It's like a dissertation, but an entertaining story. That's pretty cool. With all that research and all of this hard work that you do, going back and adding details to your stories after you listen to them, that's a lot of love and a lot of work. Let me put it this way: what is your mission with your stories? What are you trying to accomplish, basically, in this process?
If anything, it is to share with my readers the sense of wonder that my father infected me with. I want to share that wonder and excitement that I have about ideas, and to offer different perspectives on things that we may not have had times to speculate or think about in detail, things that people may simply take for granted. In all my stories, it's all about ideas. It's not. That's what I like about writing. You can reach out and touch others that you've never met, the way that long dead authors touched and changed me.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So we can make an impact long after we've left this earth or this cosmos, is what you're basically telling me. So that's...
Yeah, actually, if you think of a library, most of these authors who wrote books decades or centuries ago, many of them may have passed, but you pick up a book and you enter their world, and they touch you as if they were 6 feet away.
Yes.
And talking to you even now. So that's also why I love libraries.
Yes, the human experience. We all have that in common. If we don't have anything else, we have the human experience in common. Well, very good. So we're going to wrap up this episode. I just want to thank everyone again. I want to acknowledge our listeners, and we know that you're out there listening. We know that you love what you hear, and we always appreciate you, no matter whether you're just listening or if you're taking the steps to like and subscribe. We don't care about any of that. We just want you to really have a wonderful listening experience, and we hope that this episode so far has been super enlightening to you about what you're listening to, who you're listening to, and the motivation behind it. So thanks for listening to this episode. The last question for you, Jeff, and I appreciate you hanging in with me for this. This is a lot of information and a lot of background. I'm sure that you've gone through a lot of emotional journey through this interview, so thank you. Who is your biggest supporter in your writing life? Because we all need a champion. Most of the greats have had, one or several champions. Who is your biggest supporter?
Well, that would probably be my children and fellow writers who gave me encouragement to continue. My wife edits all of my books, and I value her opinion above all others. But like I said, frankly, she doesn't like science fiction very much, so it touches me that she likes what I write. But without her participation helping me with my books, I would probably still be unpublished. So I need to thank her specifically, but also wanted to thank all the readers out there who listen to or read my stories, and thank you for letting me be a storyteller.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Robinson. We need to acknowledge you as your creative side and your analytical side. all this genius and this high quality that you promise in your literature, that you actually deliver in your literature. So we want to acknowledge you and thank you for that, and for giving us something good to listen to, something that's worthwhile, especially in the science fiction genre. Myself as a narrator, I just appreciate you. It has been a wonderful journey to become the characters that you create, and to challenge my performance levels to do justice to the stories that you've written with your heart. So I just appreciate that. And it's been a wonderful journey. It's only episode 10. So we have so much further to go. I'm so excited, whenever we're at episode 100, to look back and see where we were now. We're just at the beginning. We're just revving up those engines. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. As always, if you like and subscribe, you'll get notified whenever we have new episodes going up. We also have a Patreon for my narrating efforts. So you'll find out about that when you go to the podcast. We are on every single podcast player on the planet in the cosmos. So if you find a podcast player that we're not on, then let us know, because we believe that we are on all of them. And that is actually for your convenience, so that whatever podcast player you're using normally, you can just find us on that one. So
thank you very much, Melissa. Your energy and devotion is an inspiration. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you as well. Thank you so much again. We appreciate your attention. We appreciate Jeff's time. We appreciate you as always, and we know you'll love what you hear. Have a great day.
You'll love what you hear. You'll love what you hear.